Welcome to The Explainer. You ever wonder who's actually driving the economy? Is it individual ambition or is it government design? It's a huge question that, believe it or not, affects everything from your grocery bill to your job. So today, we're going to unpack the forces, both seen and unseen, that guide the U.S. economy and try to figure out who's really in the driver's seat.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics. What exactly is economic policy? Then we'll look at the two big competing ideas, capitalism and socialism. From there, we'll see how the U.S. kind of makes its own unique mix. And finally, we'll trace it all back to this one single, really powerful idea from Adam Smith that honestly still shapes our world today.
Okay, let's jump right in. When we talk about the economy, it can feel like this giant, uncontrollable thing. But governments actually have a specific set of tools they use to try and steer it.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Who's in charge? The truth is, it's complicated. In the U.S., the government has two main levers it can pull. And these tools, they affect everything, from the interest rates on your credit card to the funding for your local school. So understanding them is pretty crucial.
First up, we've got fiscal policy. The easiest way to think about this is like the government's checkbook. It's all about the money coming in, that's taxes, and the money going out for things like roads, schools, and defense. Congress gets to make these decisions, and every choice they make either pumps money into the economy or takes it out.
The second tool, monetary policy, is a little more behind the scenes. This is what the Federal Reserve, the Fed, does. When the Fed changes interest rates, it makes it cheaper or more expensive for banks to lend money. So next time you think about getting a car loan or a mortgage, just know the Fed's decisions are what set the stage for your monthly payment. Okay, so we've got the tools. Now let's zoom out and look at the two major economic philosophies that use these tools. Think of them as the big blueprints for how you can run a country's economy. If you really boil it down, the difference comes down to one simple thing: who's calling the shots? In a pure capitalist system, it's private individuals and companies. In a pure socialist system, it's the government. Now, of course, in the real world, no country is purely one or the other. But this split over who has the main economic power, that's the fundamental difference right there.
All right, so keeping those two big ideas in mind, where does the United States fit in? Are we one or are we the other? Well, the reality is not that simple. It's actually a blend.
So at its core, the U.S. economy is built on a capitalist foundation. Private ownership, competition, all that. But, and this is a big but, the government plays a really active role. It is definitely not just sitting on the sidelines.
And you can really see just how involved the government is right here. It provides a safety net for retirees with Social Security, it breaks up monopolies to keep things fair, it supports farmers, and builds enormous projects like the Hoover Dam that no private company could ever do alone. And when there's a crisis, who steps in? The government. This is that hybrid in action.
To really get the capitalist engine that drives this whole hybrid system, we've got to go all the way back to 1776 and meet the guy they call the father of modern economics.
This is Adam Smith, and his book, The Wealth of Nations, it wasn't just a book. It was this revolutionary idea that basically laid out the blueprint for how market economies could create prosperity on a scale nobody had ever seen before.
And there it is. This is probably the most famous quote in all of economics. And it's kind of a puzzle, right? How can one person, just looking out for themselves, somehow end up doing something good for everybody else? Well, Smith's answer was that they are led by an invisible hand.
Okay, so here's the deal. The invisible hand is a metaphor. It's Smith's way of describing how, in a free market, when millions of people are all buying and selling just for their own benefit, it creates this kind of spontaneous order. It figures out what needs to be made, what the price should be, and it does it all without a single person being in charge.
All right, let's really focus on that last part of the quote, this idea of promoting an end which was no part of his intention, because this is where it all clicks into place. This is what was so radical about his theory. Think about it. A baker doesn't bake bread because he's a great guy who wants you to be happy. He does it to make a living. A tech company doesn't invent cool new things for the good of humanity. It does it to crush the competition. But the unintended end is that we all get bread to eat and amazing new gadgets. Public good, born from private ambition. But here's the million-dollar question. What happens when that self-interest leads to things like pollution or unsafe products or giant monopolies that kill all competition, when the unintended end is actually a bad thing? Well, that's when the whole conversation about the government's role comes roaring back.
And that brings us right back to where we started. This is exactly why the US isn't a pure free-for-all market. It totally relies on that invisible hand to spark innovation and growth. But it uses the visible hand of government, all those policies and programs, to step in when the market's unintended consequences go wrong.
So we're left with this. The American system is this constant tug of war between two really powerful ideas. And the debate over where to draw that line, how much freedom, how much government help, that's the central economic debate of our time. There's no easy answer, and where we decide to draw that line is something every single one of us has a stake in.